The film begins by showing a man who cautiously observes the movements of the people around him, looking for any possible threat. His name is Cole Reed, a private security guard. Upon receiving the information that his boss is coming down, he quickly goes to wait for him at the elevator. His boss, Tibu Kimpalo, is a billionaire industrial businessman, owner of KMG, a large company in the maritime transport business, which is now in negotiations to be sold together with his son Cameron. Later, while playing chess, Cole and Tibu talk a little, and Cole says that he learned to play in prison with the inmates during the period when he was a police officer. Tibu asks if he misses the police, but Cole replies that he only misses the action and that there is no going back, because he ended up irritating the wrong people inside the corporation. Tibu reminds him that that day would have been his father's birthday if he were alive, and says that he would have liked to have known him. Cole states that he really was an incredible person and that he was much better at chess than he was. Later, Cole observes some photos of his father on the tablet and looks at them with longing, wishing him a happy birthday. At night, Tibu and Cameron go to an important event where the sale of the company will be made official. While Tibu talks with colleagues, Cole remains, as always, attentive to any suspicious movement among the people. He then observes a man he considers somewhat suspicious and asks his partner about his identification. He is introduced as Jaron Daniels from the Trans-Pacific export area. While Tibu gives a speech, Jaron greets the guests at the event and notices that Cole is watching him. At the end of his statement, Tibu also thanks his son Cameron for the success of the company. He also calls Cole to the front and asks him to join the family. Cole goes somewhat embarrassed and receives a watch as a gift. When looking at the back of the object, he notices that there is a date engraved. Tibu then explains that on that date, 5 years ago, it was the day Cole saved his life. For that reason, he hired him as a personal security guard, and since then, came to consider him part of the family. They then make a toast in honor of the family. Meanwhile, Jaron is on a call and says that although they are celebrating, the sale of the company will be canceled that night. As they return home, Cole comments that the night seems to have been good, and Tibu agrees. However, Cole notices that his boss has a somewhat serious expression and asks if he is all right. Tibu only says that he never imagined he would sell his company, and that in truth, he never wanted to do that. Cole asks why then he is selling it, and Tibu replies that he is doing it for his son because the dream of building KMG was his, not Cameron's, and that the maritime transport business was not for him. He explains that he wanted to give his son the opportunity to follow his own dreams. Cole says that Cameron will never forget him for that, and Tibu thanks him. As they continue the route, the GPS indicates a closed street, but when they follow another path, they find the road blocked by a truck. While police officers ask them to get out of the car, Cole tries to go back, but observes vehicles coming from behind and realizes that it is an ambush. He asks Tibu to duck, and the car is then hit by several shots, but Cole manages to keep driving and runs over one of the criminals. He turns around and also drives over the men who were behind, managing to get out of the vehicle and shoot the rest of the attackers. However, he realizes that Tibu was hit during the confrontation and is about to die. He then makes his final request, asking Cole to take care of Cameron, and Cole promises that nothing will happen to him. Tibu then dies at that moment. Cole calls his security partner Taryn, who is at the mansion. He asks if Cameron is with him, and Taryn confirms. Cole says that they were ambushed and that Tibu is dead. Taryn asks him to call the police, but Cole states that the authorities are also involved and that they cannot trust anyone. He takes a passport that was in the car and asks Taryn to check the document's data in the system. Taryn identifies one of those involved as a former Marine and also discovers that he was a member of the KMG crew and would board the Artemis in 2 hours. Cole then decides to go to the port to discover who was responsible for that. Meanwhile, Jaron receives the news that Tibu is dead, but that his bodyguard managed to escape. Then, he asks the police to issue an all-points alert to capture him and determines that they should not bring him in alive. Elsewhere, Angie Ellis, a KMG employee on probation, follows the news about Tibu's death during a routine police stop in which the main suspect would be Cole, his bodyguard, described as extremely dangerous. Ellis receives a call urgently requesting that she board the Artemis because the crew is reduced. She tries to justify herself, saying that her daughter is in Los Angeles and that her flight will leave in 3 hours, but the man on the other end of the line only states that if she does not appear on the vessel within 1 hour, she will be dismissed from the company. With no other alternative, she accepts. At the mansion, Cameron is crying over his father's death when a detective arrives to ask some questions. However, he receives a call and steps away to answer it. On the other end, Cole speaks with Cameron, says he is sorry, and that he did everything he could to save his father. Cameron warns that the investigators are at the mansion and that the news reports are saying that Cole was the one who killed his father. He, however, denies the information, explaining that they were ambushed and that Cameron must remain confined because soon they will come after him. Cole then ends the call and heads toward the port. When he arrives at the place, he presents the Mercenaries' passport to the port guard, who watches him suspiciously, but, in the end, allows him to pass. Cole then boards and infiltrates among the crew members. He hides in a remote area so as not to be recognized and remains there, waiting for the right moment to come out. Meanwhile, the ship's captain, Marco, follows the news about Tibu's death and about how his bodyguard, Cole Reeds, is considered dangerous. Mateo, the first mate, arrives and introduces Ellis to Marco as the replacement third officer, but he questions the fact that she is a woman and is on the crew. He asks a crew member to accompany her to her cabin, and, after she leaves, tells Mateo that he will stay with her during the night shift and asks him to keep an eye on her. The vessel leaves the port and begins sailing through the sea. At a certain point, Cole spots a crew member alone and leaves his hiding place to follow him, but needs to hide when Ellis appears with a flashlight, inspecting the vessel. While he remains hidden, he notices small whispers that seem to come from below and finds a hatch, which he opens to pass through it. Ellis hears the metallic noise and heads to the place where she observes the opening. Cole continues following the sound of a female voice he can hear and reaches a container. He uses an iron bar to break a lock and manages to open the door. Inside, he finds several people, including children, held captive. He asks how they ended up there, and one of them, who can speak English, says that they were deceived and ended up trapped there. Cole then says that he will help them, bringing water, food, and some medical supplies, but asks them to remain silent. At that moment, they hear Ellis's voice approaching, asking if there is anyone in that place. Cole says that he will have to go, but says that he will return, and then hides again. Ellis approaches and notices one of the containers open. When checking its interior, she also finds the people who were imprisoned. Surprised, she asks them to come out, saying that she will help them. Then, she tries to communicate with her companion, but the communication fails. At that instant, Joseph and Simon arrive at the place, and Ellis says that she found those people and that she will need help. She leaves in search of assistance and leaves the men with them. Then, she goes to Marco's cabin and warns that she found those people inside one of the containers and that they need help. Marco asks her to calm down, takes the radio, and communicates with Mateo. He says that Ellis found people in the hold containers and that he will follow protocol. Ellis says that they need to call the Navy, and Marco states that he will do that, but that first he needs to know what is happening. He again asks her to calm down and says that he will request medical help. While other people begin communicating with Marco, Ellis starts to distrust his behavior and believes that he is also involved with that. She then leaves the place. After she leaves, Simon and Joseph threaten the Thai people, forcing them to return inside the container, but chaos breaks out when some of the victims try to escape. Joseph is about to assault a person, but Cole stops him, manages to disarm him, and knocks him down using a padlock. Simon shoots at Cole, but he manages to protect himself. One of the prisoners then reacts and manages to take Simon's gun, but discovers that his ammunition had run out, and Simon manages to stop him. Meanwhile, Ellis reaches the bridge and informs Mateo that they need to call the Navy. However, Mateo is also involved in the scheme, points a gun at her, and communicates with Marco. He asks her to move away, but when he goes to answer the radio, Ellis takes the opportunity to disarm him and strike him. Cole is still fighting Joseph and manages to grab his weapon, using it to shoot Simon and Joseph himself. Then, he warns the hostages that they will need to leave the ship and leads them to the lifeboats. Ellis tries to establish communication with the Navy, but Marco approaches and, before he can reach her, she sends an emergency signal and flees. Marco tries to shoot Ellis while she escapes, and one of the shots manages to hit her. He then orders the others to go after her. Matteo interrupts the emergency signal, and Marco asks him to go down to prevent the victims from escaping through the lifeboats. Cole leads the refugees to the boats and gives a weapon to one of the men so that he can protect himself, and says that he will stay to help the woman who is also protecting them. Meanwhile, on a Navy ship, the crew receives the distress call coming from the Artemis. However, Spencer, Marco, finds it strange that the signal was canceled soon after. He decides to call the Artemis to confirm the situation, and Marco answers. He explains that one of his crew members had seen a light in the middle of the sea and thought it was an enemy vessel, but that in fact, it was only a small fishing boat. Spencer says that they are too far from the coast to spot fishing boats, but Marco states that it is not the first time he has seen one in that region and apologizes for making the Navy waste time. Spencer then says that he is glad they are okay and turns off the radio, still suspicious. Then, he asks his subordinate to check whether there are fishing boats registered to sail in that region, near the Artemis at that time, and also requests that they carry out an investigation on Marco. Meanwhile, Cole is hidden and notices Ellis approaching while fleeing. He manages to hold her and takes her to a protected place. There, he asks her to trust him because he is not part of that group. As the prisoners try to escape, the crew arrives at the scene and hits one of the armed men before he can react, ordering everyone to get out of the lifeboat. Cole and Ellis hear the shots, and she says that she needs to help them, but, before that, they decide to treat her wound. The two go to another more remote place, where Cole takes care of Ellis's injuries. They introduce themselves, and she says that she has a 6-year-old daughter and that she was once part of the Navy. After treating the wound, the two leave the hiding place shortly before other agents arrive at the place. As they proceed, Ellis questions Cole about what happened to Tibu and asks if he really killed him and also killed the police officers. He, however, explains that this is not what happened and that at that moment, the priority is to take those people to a safe place. Ellis says that she sent a message to the Navy but does not know if they will show up, and explains that only on the bridge will they be able to communicate with someone outside. Cole says that they need to get there, but to do so, they will need to create a distraction. Ellis then has an idea and takes him to another place, where she shows him the area where the batteries are. Cole then burns some pieces of cardboard so that the fire spreads, and the two move away from there. Soon after, the flames begin to spread through the place, causing the ship's fire alarm to be activated. Marco hears the alert and orders them to isolate the area and follow the fire protocol, but warns his subordinates that this is only a distraction and asks them to keep 2 men in the ship's 2 towers and orders Matteo to go down to help contain the fire. Meanwhile, Marco decides to go alone to one of the towers. Cole and Ellis head toward the bridge and when they arrive, find a man guarding the place, but Cole manages to take him down. Ellis then takes the radio and tries to ask for help, but receives no response. While she tries to establish communication, Cole observes Marco in the distance. Marco realizes that his subordinate is not responding and spots Cole on the bridge, ordering his men to go there. When one of them arrives, he is quickly detained by Cole. At that moment, Spencer answers the call from the Artemis. Ellis identifies herself and says that she is with Cole and communicates that they are in an emergency situation, that the commander of the ship is involved in a human trafficking operation and asks for help as quickly as possible. Spencer then orders the ship to change course toward the Artemis. Cole leaves a radio on the bridge, while Ellis takes him to her cabin. When they get there, she looks at her daughter's portrait and begins to consider the possibility that she will not get out of that situation alive. Cole tries to calm her and promises that the two of them will get out of there and that she will be able to reunite with her daughter. Marco gathers his men on the bridge, while Cole and Ellis listen to the conversation over the radio. Marco announces that there will be a change of plans and says that the operation will be carried out in 2 hours, from ship to ship, but the two cannot understand what he meant. Soon after, Marco calls Geron and questions what Cole Reed is doing on his ship and why he had not taken care of him before. Geron replies that the extermination team failed, but asks Marco not to allow Cole to interfere with the transaction. Marco states that they moved up the delivery, that he contacted Burtis, and that he is already on his way. Then, he asks about Cameron and whether the negotiation is still on. Geron says that the sale of the company has been suspended and that everything is going as expected. Ellis asks Cole if Cameron is involved in that, but he replies that he does not know. At that moment, they hear someone approaching and decide to escape through the window. Ellis suggests that they go down through the ventilation duct to reach where the refugees are in order to rescue them, and Cole agrees. Meanwhile, Spencer receives the report on Marco, which reveals that he has already been investigated twice for looting and smuggling, and that his team is made up of former soldiers and mercenaries. Spencer asks about Cole Reed, whom Ellis had informed was with her. Then, he sees the news that Cole is the main suspect in the death of businessman Tibu. Spencer requests satellite images of the ship and notices the presence of heavily armed men on board, understanding that the situation is more serious than he imagined. Spencer, realizing that his ship will take more than an hour to arrive, sends a specialized team in a faster vessel. Cole goes down through the ventilation duct, while Ellis tries to follow another path. Some men hear a noise coming from the ducts and shoot at him, but, luckily, the shots do not hit Cole, who manages to exit at the lower part of the ship. They inform Marco that they believe Cole passed through the ducts, and he orders them to return to the deck, saying that he will take care of Cole personally. As Ellis advances, she is surprised by Mateo, who strikes her and knocks her down. He then takes her to Marco, who orders his men to watch her while he goes down to look for Cole. While moving through the ship with his men, Cole notices their presence and realizes that he is at a disadvantage. Then, he shoots a power breaker, causing the lights in the environment to go out, and remains hidden. However, Marco returns and locks the room from the outside, leaving him trapped. Cole tries to open the door but cannot. He then finds some tools and uses them to obstruct the passage of another duct, through which he manages to climb to escape. On the Navy ship, Spencer receives a more complete report on Cole Reed's life. He is informed that Cole was once part of the Navy and later became a police officer, receiving awards for acts of bravery and heroism. He served under the command of his own father in a specialized police unit, but during one of the missions, he ended up trapped, causing his father to go rescue him. However, his father was hit by a gunshot and died. After that, Cole left the police to seek revenge for his father's death. Spencer, analyzing the situation more rationally, concludes that the people responsible for Tibu's death are on the ship and that Cole is there seeking revenge. Meanwhile, Cole remains inside the ventilation duct and manages to observe an armed soldier guarding the refugees. At that moment, they hear the sound of a ship horn, and another small vessel is shown approaching the Artemis. Cole understands that they intend to transport the refugees to the other vessel and tries to get out of the duct, but finds the passage blocked. He then uses the watch Tibu gave him to manage to open the passage. Meanwhile, Burtis's crew arrives on the ship, and Marco receives them. Ellis, still tied up, takes advantage of the moment of distraction to grab a shard of glass that was on the floor and tries to cut the ropes that bind her. After managing to get out of the duct, Cole uses the ship's chains to reach the side of the vessel and then manages to climb up to the deck. He takes down a soldier and takes his gun. Marco shows the refugees to Burtis, but at that instant, they hear Cole's gunshots on the deck, and everyone points their weapons at one another, questioning what is happening on the ship. Marco admits that there is a stowaway on board, but asks Burtis's men to calm down, stating that he will solve the problem. Then, he sends his men to eliminate him and also orders Mateo to return to the bridge and finish off Ellis once and for all. On the bridge, Ellis manages to untie herself and kills the enemy who was watching her, then takes the weapon. She hears someone approaching and shoots Mateo as soon as he enters her field of vision. Marco and Burtis also split up to look for Cole, who heads toward the place where the refugees are, killing Marco's men one by one. On the way, he finds Marco, who shoots at him, almost hitting him. Cole tries to shoot back, but his ammunition runs out. He hides and grabs an axe attached to the wall. At that moment, Bertus appears at the door, and Cole quickly strikes him and tries to take his weapon, but Marco shoots at him, causing Cole to only manage to recover the axe. However, Marco's ammunition also runs out, and Cole realizes the situation, deciding to advance against him with the axe. Marco manages to protect himself, and the two begin a hand-to-hand fight. During the confrontation, Marco takes a knife that was in his boot and manages to injure Cole, throwing him toward the side of the ship. However, he realizes that Cole managed to hold on to the walkway railing and advances against him with the axe. Cole uses the knife that wounded his chest to fight and continues facing the enemy. Cole almost falls from the walkway, but manages to climb back up, hit Marco with the knife, and throw him together with himself onto Bertus's ship. There, they face each other again. This time, Cole uses a hook to fight, manages to hit Marco, and pins him against a box. Then, he finds a harpoon and points it at him, saying that this would be for Tibu. Then, he fires the harpoon, which hits Marco in the head. After finally defeating him, the Navy soldiers arrive and arrest Cole. However, Ellis appears and informs them that Cole had nothing to do with that, and that in truth, he had saved all of them. One of the soldiers asks if he is Cole Reed, but Ellis lies, saying that he is her companion and that Cole had been hit by a shot and thrown into the sea. The soldier then goes to talk to Cole, who informs him that there are people on the ship who need medical care. Soon, the refugees are removed from the place, receive assistance, and go through the necessary treatment. Ellis talks to a person who offers to help her get to Los Angeles, where she will be able to reunite with her daughter. Cole notices that that was Marco's radio and asks Ellis if there is a call log, and she confirms. Ellis says that if he returns to the city, they will try to kill him, but Cole states that he needs to finish that. Although Spencer and the soldier did not believe Ellis's version that that was not Cole, they allow him to leave on Bertus's vessel. Cole calls Terran, asking him to research a code he found on Marco's radio. Then, it is revealed that Jaren was the person he had been communicating with, and Cole warns that he is coming back. A few hours later, Cameron visits Tibu's tombstone, and, when he goes to get into his car, comes across Cole sitting in the seat. He asks him to get into the vehicle and, before Cole says anything, begins to explain himself. Cameron states that he only allowed them to use the ships to transport cargo, but that he had no idea what he was getting into. He says that they started threatening him and that afterward the situation got out of control, with several shipments being made per week. He says that he believed that by selling the company, he would be able to get rid of that situation, but never imagined that they would go so far. Cole then states that he caused his father's death and that he will have to live with that for the rest of his life. The film ends during the night, when Cole causes a collision with Jaren's car, shoots his driver, and pulls him out of the vehicle. He asks why they killed Tibu. Jaren explains that, with control of the company in Cameron's hands, whom they can manipulate, they will be able to continue using the ships to transport the cargo. Cole says that it was human trafficking, but Jaren asks how much he wants and what he desires in exchange. Cole, however, strikes him and shoots him, saying that he only wanted revenge.